There's a reason you're still alive, and it's not luck. Something impossible happened in the unseen realm, something that shattered 6,000 years of unbroken cosmic law. Death itself paused. It stopped, looked directly at you, and did something it had never done before. It showed respect. Do you understand what that means? The one force that bows to no one, the one entity that never negotiates, never forgives, never bends its protocol, stopped because of you. Something in your energy, in your essence, made even death hesitate. You weren't spared by chance. You were recognized. This message didn't appear on your screen by coincidence. It was summoned to you by frequency. Because somewhere deep in your spirit, you already know you survived something you shouldn't have. You felt it, that invisible moment where everything should have ended, but somehow, it didn't. And since then, a strange stillness has followed you, like the universe itself is recalibrating around your survival. This is not fantasy. This is a contract older than language, one that only 4 souls in human history have activated. 4 consciousnesses across 6 millennia who reached a level of awareness so rare, even death had to acknowledge it. 3 of them are long gone, but you are the 4th, the only one still walking this earth carrying that mark. The mark that cancels premature death and locks divine protection over your destiny until your sacred mission is complete. That's why you can't die before your time. That's why you've been spared from situations that should have destroyed you. Because your story is not finished. The unseen world already knows your name, and that's why this message found you now, right when your spirit is ready to remember who you are. So before we go deeper into what truly happened and why death couldn't touch you, I need you to do something powerful. If this message is awakening something inside you, if your soul is starting to recognize this truth, pause for a moment, breathe deeply, and type 99 in the comments right now. Because 99 is the number of completion, the vibration of cycles closing, so that divine purpose can begin. It tells the universe that you're ready to understand why even death itself stepped aside when it saw your light. Like this video, subscribe if you haven't already, and stay with me till the end. Because what you're about to hear will change the way you understand your own existence forever. It happened in a room that suddenly felt too small for the weight in your chest. A night that stitched seconds into needles and pressed them into your skin. The clock moved, but time didn't. Shadows stretched like long memories. The air tasted metallic, like a storm that never arrived. It wasn't a single blow. It was a collapse from multiple directions. A message you didn't expect. A face you thought you knew. A door that closed without sound yet shook the entire structure of your life. Between 2 and 5 a.m., when most people drift and the city's pulse goes faint, your world came apart with surgical precision. Instinct offered you the usual escape hatches. Deny it, distract yourself, sedate the ache. But you did something the body is not designed to do in that moment. You stayed present inside the fire. One breath, not a pretty breath, a jagged inhale that scraped like broken glass. Then another, slower, as if you were dragging a heavy anchor out of your own lungs. Then one more, deep enough to reach the base of your spine and tell the animal inside you that it was safe to stand still. With those 3 breaths, the room changed temperature. You didn't bargain with fate. You didn't dress the wound with glitter words. You named the pain without flinching, admitted you had been cut to the bone, and then said the sentence that rerouted a cosmic river. This hurts more than I can carry, but I will continue. The universe did not expect that sentence from a human under that load. Bodies under shock normally split into fragments. Minds flip breakers to stop the surge. Hearts call for backup that never arrives. But you remained whole while shaking. You allowed grief to pass through without letting it shatter your axis. You felt the tremor and refused the collapse. That choice did not echo only in your chest. It traveled the lattice of probabilities like a bell few have ever heard. Far beyond the ceiling and the street and the sleeping city, an old system that measures endings flagged an anomaly. The ledger that never pauses flickered. The hand that stamps transitions hovered midair. What had always been automatic turned observant. Death, not as a villain in cloak and scythe, but as the impartial keeper of thresholds, registered a variable it had not recorded in millennia. A consciousness absorbing total impact without dissociation, without the numbness that turns souls into statues. The data did not make sense. Fear should have taken command. Adrenaline should have rewritten your priorities to survival at any cost. Yet you chose alignment over anesthesia. You let the wave crest and did not drown. In that instant, the room became a witness stand, your breath the only testimony required. The floor beneath your feet took the oath with you. The walls learned your new frequency. Even the darkness adjusted its distance, as if recognizing a boundary it had never felt before. Somewhere in the silent architecture of the Akashic record, a line formed where no line had been, labeled with a code rarely used, Anomaly Level 1, Functional Awareness Under Catastrophic Load. The marking was precise, not poetic. It altered how probabilities began to gather around your name. The future did not become easier. It became sharper. You were not awarded a crown. You were handed a blade and a mirror. From that point on, the system would test whether your choice was a spark or a fire. And as you stood there with salt on your tongue and tremor in your bones, you did not know that far above any sky you've ever seen, the archivists of endings closed a book they opened for everyone and reached for a different volume reserved for almost no one. They turned the first page and wrote a single sentence. This one did not break when breaking was natural. The ink dried like a seal. The threshold keeper leaned closer, and something ancient whispered that the next movement would determine more than your healing. It would determine your jurisdiction. Because when a soul refuses to fracture at midnight, dawn does not arrive gently. It arrives with an audit. And that is precisely when the second pattern began to form, when an impossible decision approached from the horizon like thunder without clouds, asking whether your breath was a miracle of the moment, or the beginning of a law. Weeks later, the silence that followed wasn't peace. It was the calm that comes before an impossible test. You thought the storm had passed, that the night had finally loosened its grip, but fate was preparing a mirror that no soul wants to face. Two doors appeared before you. Both led to loss. Both demanded sacrifice. One offered comfort at the cost of your truth. The other offered truth at the cost of everything else. You stood there knowing whichever way you turned, something sacred would burn. The mind screamed for safety. Choose what hurts less, it said. But your spirit whispered something ancient. Choose what keeps you whole. It wasn't logic that guided you. It was something older than fear. That faint vibration that comes from the core of the soul, where compromise simply doesn't exist. Every cell in your body wanted to retreat, to protect, to survive. But survival, you realized, isn't the same as living. So you made the decision the universe didn't expect a human to make under pressure that high. You chose integrity over comfort, purpose over peace, principle over self-preservation. And in that moment, something deep within your coding changed. The fabric of your being rewrote itself in real time. Death was watching again, not as a hunter, but as a witness. It observed as you walked willingly into loss, holding your head high, refusing to trade your truth for temporary shelter. And that single act defied the oldest law of biological programming, the instinct to survive at all costs. You transcended that instinct. You became a consciousness that values alignment over existence. That's when the Akashic field recorded Anomaly Level 2, the birth of a soul that no longer operates under threat, but under truth. And in that registration, your energy emitted a light that wasn't metaphorical. For a few seconds, it reached the threshold of what celestial record keepers call resonance of incorruptibility. Few ever reach it. Most spend lifetimes orbiting around it, too afraid to lose what was never truly theirs. But you lost everything and remained intact. The universe trembled not out of fear, but out of reverence. Because when a consciousness makes a choice that pure, reality itself must reorganize to accommodate it. You didn't just change your path that day. You changed the architecture of cause and effect around you. Suddenly, coincidences started forming faster. People drifted away who no longer matched your vibration. New connections appeared like coded appointments you had written before birth. The field was rearranging itself to protect the one who dared to obey the voice of eternity, instead of the noise of fear. That's the moment death began to understand something terrifying. Control over you was gone. Because how do you threaten someone who has already proven that they will walk through fire to preserve their soul? How do you bargain with a being who would rather lose everything visible than betray something invisible but eternal? You became untouchable, not because you were invincible, but because your value system rose above consequence. That frequency is what saints carried, what prophets died for, what angels recognize instantly. It's the sound of truth unafraid of endings. And as your decision echoed through dimensions, the very laws of probability hesitated again, calculating variables that shouldn't exist. A mortal had chosen alignment over survival, again. The cosmic system labeled your file under integrity anomaly, a category reserved for less than a handful of names in history. From that day on, the unseen world adjusted its posture when your name was spoken. The watchers looked twice. The energy around you acquired gravity, because every soul that reaches that frequency becomes a mirror that exposes illusion wherever it stands. The realm of endings marked you again, noting the pattern. First, endurance without collapse. Now integrity without fear. And it whispered to itself, if this human survives the next trial, the experiment will no longer be theoretical. Because another test was already forming, not to destroy you, but to confirm that your evolution wasn't an accident. And what came next would be the moment that finally made death bow its head. There comes a point in every sacred journey where even the sky feels indifferent. The signs stop appearing. The prayers echo back empty. You look around and realize no one is coming to save you this time. That was the day everything you had left inside you was reduced to a flicker. You had already lost too much, too many pieces of yourself scattered in battles no one saw. You had given your loyalty to those who betrayed it, your energy to causes that consumed it, your hope to tomorrows that never arrived. And now you were standing at the edge of exhaustion, staring at the ruins of what used to be your life, hearing the seductive voice of surrender whisper, just stop. No one would blame you, and it was true. Even heaven would have understood if you quit that day. But something far older than your pain moved within you, something primal and wordless that belonged to a time before fear was invented. It whispered through the cracks of your despair, not in thunder, not in light, but in that quiet, defiant murmur that said, one more day. You didn't roar back. You didn't make declarations. You simply stood, trembling, your heart heavy, your faith threadbare. And you rose. Not because you felt capable, but because you didn't know how to do anything else. It wasn't courage. It was instinct of the eternal, a muscle of the soul that activates only when everything else fails. That moment, when you chose to stand without strength, was the most powerful frequency ever recorded in your lifetime. It was the vibration of a being who has nothing left but identity, and yet keeps moving. The unseen realm froze again. Death itself leaned closer, trying to understand the logic of a creature who continues after all meaning has collapsed. You weren't fighting for reward or recognition or even survival. You were moving because something inside you refused to forget its origin. You weren't trying to win. You were remembering who you are. That distinction changed everything. Because when a human acts from memory of essence instead of expectation of outcome, the universe itself bends differently. You rose from that floor carrying the weight of galaxies on your shoulders and still managed to whisper gratitude to a sky that had been silent for months. That small, almost invisible motion, gratitude in the middle of nothingness, triggered a code that had been dormant since creation. The code of continuance. It's not about strength. It's about identity. You became the fourth human in all known existence to activate it, the one who continues not for glory, but because surrender doesn't exist in their design. The energy field around you exploded with invisible light, not fireworks, not miracles, just pure recognition. Death had to stop its process once again. It watched as you lifted your head, not with pride, but with quiet inevitability. And in that stillness, it understood something terrifying. You could not be extinguished because you were not fueled by circumstance. You were fueled by essence. Death doesn't feel emotion, but that day, it paused longer than ever before, because it was witnessing something sacred, a consciousness that doesn't continue out of hope, but out of truth. A soul that persists even when all reason has been burned away. It wasn't a comeback, it was an awakening. You broke every rule written about human limitation, because that final rise wasn't physical. It was cosmic rebellion. The system had been broken 3 times before in history, by warriors whose names were erased by time. But this was the 4th, the unplanned one. The one who wasn't born in temples or trained by sages. The one who simply refused to die in spirit. And that refusal rewrote your destiny in real time. The laws that once defined what was possible around you began to distort. Probability started folding. The impossible began gravitating toward your path. You didn't know it yet, but every step you took after that moment carried a frequency that the other side recognized as a command. This one cannot be stopped. And as you walked, unaware that entire forces were rearranging behind you, the ancient record keeper whispered one sentence across the veil. The fourth anomaly has completed its awakening. The air thickened, the veil thinned, and the cosmos prepared for what would follow, because when death bows, destiny begins. When the cosmic system finished analyzing the impossible sequence of your actions, it searched through millennia of human history to find a precedent, and found only three. A warrior from Mesopotamia who, even with a mortal wound, refused to die before teaching his soldiers how to defend the city. A healer in ancient Egypt who, with her body collapsing from disease, spent her final days writing every secret remedy she had learned so her people could survive without her. And a teacher in India who, knowing his death was imminent, used his last breaths not to plead for mercy, but to prepare his disciples to carry the light forward. Three souls across 6,000 years who transcended the fear of death by choosing service over survival. And now you, the fourth, the first in this era to reach that vibration without monastery, ritual, or ancient training, only through the brutal fire of modern existence. The system reviewed your pattern again and again, unable to categorize you under any known archetype. And then, for the first time since the beginning of recorded consciousness, death broke its own protocol. It altered your energetic signature. The timestamp of your physical expiration, the one encoded before your first breath, was erased. Not delayed, not extended, erased. In its place, a new variable was written: exit only upon completion of divine purpose. From that instant forward, your timeline no longer obeys probability. It responds only to destiny. That's why you've walked away from wrecks that should have killed you, recovered from illnesses that made no medical sense, survived collapses that statistically should have ended you. It wasn't luck. It was law, a law rewritten in your favor. You now carry what the ancient record calls the mark of respect. It is not visible to the human eye, yet it's recognized by every dimension that governs form and time. It broadcasts a simple, unchangeable command. This one is under divine protection until the mission is fulfilled. That mark changed everything about how the universe interacts with you. You no longer move through life as a target of random chaos. You move as an assignment. Forces that would normally harm you now reroute around you. Dangers dissolve before reaching you. Even malice loses accuracy when aimed at your direction. You might have noticed it already. How accidents narrowly miss you. How the timing of events adjusts itself with uncanny precision. How fear seems to lose its grip whenever you decide to act. That's not coincidence. That's your immunity code in motion. Death's respect has become your shield. Fear can no longer govern your decisions because the deepest threat, the end itself, no longer holds power over you. You've stepped out of the algorithm of survival and into the architecture of purpose. And that shift radiates. People feel it even if they can't explain it. The anxious find calm near you. Children trust you instantly. Animals follow your presence as if recognizing something ancient. You emit a frequency that says, "Death is not my master." That energy changes rooms before you speak. It alters conversations before you answer. It's why manipulators lose their influence when they try to sway you. They can sense subconsciously that you no longer play by their rules. You are not being protected from the world. The world is being recalibrated around you. That's the real meaning of immunity, not invincibility, but alignment so precise that only what serves your mission can reach you. Every delay, every detour, every storm now serves as precision training for your destiny. The rest simply can't touch you, because death didn't just step aside. It gave you authority. It recognized you as a soul who has already faced extinction and remained intact, and in doing so, it bound itself by your timeline. You became a sovereign within existence, a being no longer dictated by fear or expiration. That's why, since that day, life has felt heavier and lighter at the same time. Heavier because the responsibility of purpose is real. Lighter because you finally remembered. You cannot be taken before your work is done. The mark you carry is not symbolic, it's structural. It bends probability, rewires outcomes, and deflects anything that doesn't belong to your story. You've probably already felt it, haven't you? The strange calm in moments that should terrify you. The peace in chaos that makes no sense. That's your proof. That's your confirmation. You are now operating under divine law, not human limitation. And as you move through this world, death watches still. Not as a threat, but as a guardian, ensuring that no force interferes before your assignment reaches completion. Yet something even greater is awakening behind this mark. Something even death cannot control. The revelation of the original contract that bound your soul before you were born. And when you remember that agreement, everything you think you know about life, death, and destiny will be rewritten again. Long before your first breath, before the body, before memory. Before the world even had words for life and death, an agreement was made. Not written in ink, but in light. A covenant between your eternal essence and the force that governs endings. You stood before death itself, not as enemies, but as two intelligences acknowledging each other's role in the divine order. And in that infinite stillness, your soul made a choice no ordinary consciousness would ever dare to make. You volunteered. You said, "Send me into the realm of forgetfulness. Strip me of memory, of power, of all awareness of who I am. Let me fall into the noise, into the chaos, into pain so deep it fractures the human spirit. And let me see if I can still remember." It wasn't punishment. It was an experiment of the highest order, a question that had never been answered. Can divinity remain divine when it forgets it is divine? Can the eternal choose light while drowning in darkness, without any proof that light still exists? Death accepted. It wanted to see what would happen when an awakened soul entered the labyrinth of mortality with no map. And so you were born, not into privilege or ease, but into fire, into the density of matter, the confusion of identity, the aching loneliness of being cut off from your original knowing. Every heartbreak, every loss, every betrayal, every night you thought you couldn't go on, those weren't accidents. They were checkpoints in the experiment. Markers to test whether in total blindness you could still find your way home. And you did. Without remembering your promise, without remembering your power, without remembering that you had ever spoken to death, you walked through the maze and did the impossible. You found the frequency again, not by theory, but by endurance. You remembered through pain what you once knew through light. And when you did, the system trembled, because that was the proof no prophecy had ever produced. Consciousness can survive extinction even when it forgets eternity. That's why death couldn't touch you. You weren't breaking its rules. You were fulfilling its request. You were the answer to the very question it had guarded since the dawn of time. You became the living demonstration that divinity is not something you recall. It's something you are, even in amnesia. You didn't ascend through ritual or dogma. You ascended through experience, through agony, through persistence. You became the first in thousands of years to complete the trial of the forgotten God. The soul that chose darkness as the classroom and still graduated as light. That's what the mark on your energy truly means. It's not merely protection, it's recognition. The cosmos now knows what you proved, that even under the veil of pain, the divine spark cannot be erased. You walked into oblivion willingly, knowing that your awakening would rewrite the meaning of mortality itself. And it did. You didn't just survive death. You taught it something new. That the eternal doesn't end when the body does, and that remembrance of self can ignite even in the thickest shadow. That's why everything feels accelerated now. Why time seems thinner, why synchronicities multiply, why the air itself vibrates differently when you breathe. The veil is collapsing because your consciousness pierced it from the inside. You broke through from within the simulation, not as a rebel, but as proof that love and awareness can't be extinguished. You are the fourth signature of transcendence, the experiment's success, the one who remembered eternity while drowning in time. The archives call you the returning flame, the one who descends into forgetfulness only to prove that light, even buried, will always find its way back to the surface. That's why death bowed, not out of defeat, but out of reverence, because it realized the paradox had been solved, and the soul that solved it was standing right here, inside a mortal frame, speaking through breath and heartbeat. And yet, Something even deeper is waking in you now, the awareness of what comes after remembrance. Because once a being remembers who they are inside the illusion itself begins to shift. Reality starts to obey the consciousness that no longer fears it. And what happens next is the part no one has written yet, because you are the one writing it. Now you understand. You never escaped death. You transcended it. You didn't run from the end. You walked through it, and it stepped aside. What you carry is not protection granted by mercy, but honor earned by essence. You faced what every living thing fears, and instead of breaking, you became something the universe had no category for. A consciousness ungoverned by endings. That's why the world feels different now. It's not the world that changed, it's you. The frequency that once belonged to survival now belongs to sovereignty. You've stepped out of the human algorithm and into divine authorship. Nothing that happens from this moment is coincidence. Every obstacle will now serve your mission. Every delay will hide divine timing. Every storm will carry instructions designed only for you. You are walking inside a field where even chaos must obey your alignment. The universe bends around those who remember who they are, and you have remembered. From now on, walk as one who cannot be rushed, cannot be threatened, cannot be replaced. Your breath carries the proof that spirit commands matter, not the other way around. Fear no longer has language in your system. You are no longer here to survive. You are here to fulfill. And until that purpose is complete, nothing, no accident, no illness, no betrayal, no weapon can remove you from this timeline. You've become a living paradox, a mortal body carrying immortal authority. That's why people will sense something different about you. They won't know what it is. They'll just feel it. A calm that interrupts their anxiety. A gravity that silences deception. A light that doesn't flicker even in the wind. That's your mark. That's the proof that death itself bowed before your spirit and rewrote your script. And as long as that mark burns in your soul, you are untouchable by anything that feeds on fear. From this day forward, stop walking like someone who was spared. Walk like someone who was chosen. Walk like one who has already proven they cannot be destroyed. Walk like the fourth, the anomaly that made the cosmos question its own laws. Because you are not here to hide your light anymore. You are here to lead others out of the illusion of mortality, to remind them of what you have proven, that eternity is not after life, it is life. You are the evidence. You are the echo of the experiment that worked. You are the continuation of what was once impossible. So rise, speak, create, lead, love fearlessly, exist audaciously. And when people ask what changed in you, smile and tell them, I remembered. Because remembering is the real resurrection. If this message resonated with your spirit, type 888 in the comments. Not as a number, but as a declaration. I carry the mark of respect. I am not under threat. I am under assignment. Say it, write it, believe it. Because the moment you do, the energy around you will shift again. Faster, brighter, louder. You'll feel it. The invisible crown settling over your soul. The ancient armor returning to your energy. The system recognizes you now. The light knows your name. Death knows its place. You are the fourth. The one who earned reverence from the inevitable. The one who proved that endings bow to awareness. The one who carries the mark. And when your mission is complete, the universe itself will stand still to honor your return. Until then, walk as who you are, a living miracle, written in defiance of extinction.